Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Joy of Connection. And I'm really happy to be here tonight because I'm on holiday, but because I'm so dedicated, I'm still doing the show. I'm streaming live from Valencia in Spain, and it is warm, as you can see. I'm very excited about that too. But tonight, I really am interested in what we're going to talk about because what you'll see is that we've been having a season about things that haven't, that we don't talk about but should talk about. And tonight we're going to speak with an author and copywriter, Serena, who's going to tell us about her book, which is called All the Words Unspoken. So the theme has been about different things that we don't talk about. But one of the things I think that we need to talk more about is love. We don't talk about love enough. We say it, we watch it in movies, we read about it, but we don't discuss it enough. So tonight we're going to have a little chat with Serena. So let's bring on board or live Serena.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. It's good to meet you.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time out because we're all busy people. So I really appreciate that. This is great. This is great. So I'm going to start the show by asking you, where do you live and where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm from the East Midlands. I kind of feel like I've conquered the East Midlands now. I've lived in Leicester, went to university in Loughborough, and now I'm living in Derby. So I think that leaves like Nottingham, maybe.
Maybe. Yes.
Yeah. So
That's fantastic. And so, the show is called The Joy of Connection. And do you remember where or how we connected?
I think initially it was through Love Biz, wasn't it? We were talking through that, and I think I watched you give a talk on values, and that was really quite inspiring actually to learn about how to figure out your personal values and how to live by them. And then that's just sort of how we connected, and then I started working with you to write some copy,
Yeah.
and we sort of built a relationship from there.
Yeah, and you're an amazing copywriter. Anybody who needs a copywriter, you better get on her website right away or get on her Facebook page or Instagram. We'll be bringing up the places to contact her, and she does a great job. So we're really
Oh,
excited
thank
to
you.
have you. But the thing is, our show is about connecting. And so one of the things I want to ask you is, how do you connect with yourself? What do you do for self-love and self-care?
This is going to sound really cliche because I write, but I write. So I will spend some time journaling. And I think that's just the easiest way for me to connect with myself. I think,
Mm.
when you kind of write with that stream of consciousness, you discover a lot about yourself. And when you're writing in a very unstructured, unfiltered way. And I think that's the time where I feel like I can really get to know myself and to understand what I'm feeling. It's kind of giving myself that space to explore what's going on for me emotionally. So I think
Love
that would
that.
be the
That's
main
really
thing.
good. And Serena, do you have a set time that you actually do your journaling? Is it in the morning, in the night, whenever you feel like it? Do you have a set time? Or
No, I'd like to make it a proper routine because I think it would just do me so good. But at the moment, it's just sort of now and again within the week, whenever I feel that I need to. But I
Mm.
think it would probably benefit me more if I made it a bit of a ritual.
Hey Lara, thanks for joining us. Thank you. Yeah, I think that a lot of people do it first thing in the morning, but I think that it's really about when you feel inspired to write. And
Mm,
sometimes, I mean, I don't write as much as I used to, but when I used to write, it was when the feeling came for me and I would
yeah.
write. So to be restricted to journaling, even though it's just a stream of consciousness, which is what's so beautiful about it, but even though to restrict it at a set time every day, I don't always feel inspired to write, even though it's just whatever happened. It may
Yeah.
not feel right at that time. So I love that you do it when you feel like it. And it's not necessarily about, a specific time of day in a specific way. So that's really good to know. That's good to know. That's different. I love that. I love that. And so tell me, you are a copywriter and an author, but how did this happen? Like, what made you decide to be a copywriter?
Um, well, I always knew that I was going to write. That I knew since I was really, really young. It was all that I really loved, and it was something I was very passionate about.
Okay.
And actually, it was kind of illness that led me to copywriting. So after I graduated, got my English degree, I realized I was in a position where actually, because I have ME, which it can be quite debilitating because you don't have as much
Okay.
energy as other people do. So I was in a position where actually I needed to work from home, and all the jobs that I'd applied for and couldn't go for in the end because I couldn't really
Mm,
trust my body, they were all kind of based in marketing, and I didn't really know what copywriting was. But once I'd found out that you could literally just write within marketing, I just thought, well, I've got to take control of my life here, and I love
mm,
writing as it is. So for me, copywriting kind of
mm.
was a bit of a savior, I guess, because it was my way back to sort of independence, and it
Yeah.
was just the perfect thing for me to be able to do from home and with my limitations. So it kind of liberated me
Mm.
in a big way.
Wow. And for those who may not know what ME is, can you explain what that is? Do you
Yeah,
mind?
so no, it's fine. It's a neurological disorder. It's not clear what causes it, but a lot of the time, if you have a really bad virus or you go through kind of physical trauma, you can actually struggle to recover. And there are actually a lot of comparisons at the minute between long COVID and ME.
Mm.
Yeah, they could be quite, well, the thinking is that pretty much very similar. Um, and basically, you're just tired all the time. You don't produce as much energy. You might, your thinking might be a bit foggy. You're in pain a lot of the time. The way that I'd sort of describe it is as if when you've got the flu and
Yes.
you
Or
stand up, your
achy.
heart's racing, you're achy, you're just tired. It's kind of like living with the flu. Um, that's probably how I would best describe it.
And is that all the time, or is that just whenever it happens? Whenever you get that feeling, is that all the time, every day, or is that on and off?
So I'd say that fatigue is there kind of all the time, which means that I have to pace myself every day. My time is planned in order to protect my energy. But there are, times when I'd get more symptoms or fewer symptoms. But yeah, so I fell ill with that when I was about 16. So it's been a very big part of my life.
Mm, mm. Wow, very impressive young woman you are. I never knew this about you, so this is really nice and really kind that you're sharing this with us. That's fantastic. You never know who else is listening in who is I don't want to say suffering, but maybe struggling with the same thing, but doesn't know
Mm.
or may relate to it by thinking, oh, I have some of those symptoms. Maybe I need to check it out. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that with us. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you decided to be a copywriter because that was your passion, writing. What made you decide, I want to write a book?
Oh, I'm such a storyteller, I think. Since I was really young, I was such a chronic daydreamer. I would spend forever in, in my head, just dreaming up different characters, dreaming up different worlds. It just felt really natural for me to sit down and write
Mm,
something. I think initially finding out what I wanted to write about was quite
mm,
difficult. That was the first
really?
hurdle. I thought, did I want to write fantasy? Did I want to write young adult fiction? And then eventually I started looking around at my life and the people in my life and thought I wanted to capture what was going on around me. I wanted to put that
Mm.
into a novel and kind of just pick pick out something that's very real and very raw that someone else could relate to.
That's great. So I love that concept of real time, like what's really happening around us now. And I think that's really important. And we're going to talk more about that, about relationships and stuff. But I wanted to ask you in terms of the the process of writing, how did you do that? Because I think many of us, I've written, I've been published as well, but because it was about my life, it was pretty straightforward to write. It just flowed. It was just more about put in the right words in the right order, etc. But do you start with an outline of the beginning, the middle, and the end, or do you have a way that you get your script together, your Your
Yeah.
writing? How do you do it?
So I'd get the kind of key events together first, and that, I looked into into life and just the people around me to pick out those key events because I knew I'd want to explore those. And then once I got those, I would just spend a lot of time fleshing out the characters. I
Mm,
think so much can become obvious to you when you've got really fleshed out characters that you can connect with. It's
yeah.
almost as if they're making the decisions for you.
Mm,
You're not thinking, oh, what should I write about here? It's just your character sort of telling you, this is how I'd react, this is what I'm going to do.
wow.
And yeah, so I think having really strong characters and a good idea of the key events that you'd want to explore
Yeah.
can help you with that process.
That's great. That's great. So from a fiction perspective, really sort of literally designing your character first, you're saying, before you actually, is this before you start writing, or do you develop them as you go along?
No, so I would do a full-on character board, and I know this sounds a bit strange, but I'm just, gonna
No.
accept that writers are strange people. You spend time with your characters, just sort of thinking about them in different situations, just getting to know them. And when you feel that, you really understand who they are, then put them in the story and see what happens,
That's
what plays
great.
out.
That's great. So tell us a bit about your book. It's called All the Words Unspoken. And so why did you call it that? Do you know? I'm sure you know, but I guess,
So
do you know? I guess the question is, when did you know? That's actually the question I want to ask you. When did you know that was going to be the title?
at the end, I think, when
Mm,
I could look at the work as a whole and I could see
yeah,
everything and I thought, wow, nobody is speaking in this book, nobody is sharing what's going on for them, and everyone's terrified of words. Once I'd made that connection, I thought, okay, well, this is the title for the book.
I love that. Everyone's terrified of words. Interesting. I mean, I think words are some of the most beautiful things that you can do. And part of the reason, or can have, and part of the reason that I'm in Spain is that I love the Spanish language because they use so many
Mm,
different words to describe things. So even the word beautiful, I mean, we have the same words, but we don't use them every day, but they use them, really specifically, maybe subtly, but very specific about each thing that they're describing. It
yeah.
tells you what kind of beauty we're really talking about. So I love that you're using words in that way. And I guess any author that writes, it's all about the words, and it's the words that conjure up the characters and brings them to life, and makes you feel like you know them, or you're having a relationship with them, or I mean, one of the things I love about reading a good book, well, I don't love actually, when I read a good book and I put it down, I feel like, oh, I miss reading about that person. It's like I've lost a friend. It's over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
difficult. It
it
is.
is. It's really difficult. So I love that. So now we know why you called it that. So how long did it take you to write?
So I didn't do anything apart from write this book. I carved out a year for myself to get this done. It took me to get the first draft, I'd say 4 months, but then
Okay.
it took me perhaps, I think once you've written something, you've got to leave it alone. You've got to look at it again with fresh eyes. So I
Yes.
left it alone for a couple of months and then I started the editing process. And if I'm honest, I think editing is much, much harder than writing. It's
Agree.
tough
I
process.
agree.
People think, writing's the hardest bit, but actually trying to perfect every single sentence and
Yes.
get it all, flowing and sounding beautiful as well. That's really,
Yeah.
really hard.
Wow. And then if so you actually edited your own book, which I would never dare to do. I mean, I might do the first round or second round, but I would always go to somebody who can edit. So then you're your own worst critic again on top of it.
Yeah, so when I say edit, I don't kind of mean, like final proofreads and things like that. I just mean,
Okay.
so when I write, I don't know if you've heard of the quote, what is it? Write drunk, edit sober. That was kind of the
Oh,
way that I was approaching the book. So I wouldn't care about whether a sentence sounded good. first it was just about getting the story down, and if that meant writing, like a 10-year-old at some time, at some
Mm,
point, then that was
yeah.
absolutely fine. It's so much easier, I feel, to edit a page of words than to write something perfect from scratch.
Mm,
So when I say edit, I kind of mean, going back and making it sound like a novel.
yeah, that's
Um,
great. And we have
yeah.
Denise here from California, from LA. Hi, Denise. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Wow, that's really good. That's really good. So tell us a bit about the story. Does it have one protagonist? Does it have two? Tell us a little bit about, without giving it all away, obviously.
Yeah, I'm trying to be careful not to give it all away. There are two protagonists, and both of them basically agree to an arranged marriage because they want to escape their painful pasts. Um, but, as secrets do, as pasts do, they basically come up and threaten to destroy the union. And what they both went through in their past was, well, I suppose that they were put in a position where they felt they had to surrender love to appease an honor shame culture, and because of the fear of what others would say.
Mm,
So they abandon their personal will, their values, their desires because of that fear and because they don't want to face that judgment. And a lot of the times, I think people believe it's an easy way out to just give in. But what this novel does is look at the consequences of that. So you've got two people in this marriage that have had to surrender something very, something that they loved, something that meant something deep to them.
yes.
And now they're both really unhappy. And actually, you know, by surrendering that love in the first place, they're now blocked from love. They're not
Mm,
able to connect with each other, and they're trying to move past this shared pain that they don't know that they have.
wow, I love that. And I like that you describe it as shared pain that they don't know that they have. So is it, as time goes on, they realize in their respective orders that, this is why I feel this way because of XYZ that's happened, but they didn't know that initially. Is that sort of what's going on? So they've
Yeah,
had,
yeah,
yeah, they've had the experience, but they're not necessarily associating the pain that they're feeling of that experience from what's
yeah.
past. It's just sort of, we've been pushed into this marriage. Da, 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 da.
I think
Wow.
they lose sight of who they are as well because
Mhm.
they've decided to go with what is expected of them, what they think, you know, the community expects of them. And by following what they want, they lose sense of who they are. And they're
Yes.
just two very broken people trying to find their way again.
Wow. Wow. Sounds really good. That sounds like a really good read. Ooh, I love that. I love that. And so you mentioned earlier that part of it that's really important is it's a reflection of what actually happens in many communities, in many Asian communities, as we'd say in the UK, which for those of us who are not in the UK, that would be Indian, Pakistani, for example, that part of the world. So, as a community, let's talk a little bit about arranged marriages. Do they still happen?
They do, but I think nowadays, I mean, it varies. Every family is different.
Yes.
But from what I'm seeing is that people might reach, 30 years old and haven't found anyone for themselves, and then they might turn to their parents and ask them to set them up, and they might, willingly agree to an arranged marriage.
Right.
And whereas before, I think my parents probably saw each other 3 times before they got married. I
Right.
think the process now is, you can see each other for a few months before making that decision.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, so you get a bit more time.
A bit more time, yeah. But as I say, it's different for each family, and
Yes.
some families are going to be more traditional and want their son or daughter to have an arranged marriage, and other families are going to be more liberal, and it's different nowadays. But it still exists, I think. But it's kind of your choice if you want to have the arranged marriage. So I
Yeah.
think that's much more empowering.
And I know many people in the West probably think it's the worst thing, but I think there are some advantages to it. First of all, you're meeting somebody of like, coming from a similar background. So there's certain things that don't have to be explained or understood. I guess the
Mm,
hardest part is the love part, making sure that there is a connection heart to heart. But
yeah.
in terms of everything else, socioeconomically, it's a great idea. But if the love's not there, the love's not there. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I think there's a common sort of a statement in Asian communities, what people might have heard from older people is love will grow, and that seems to be their defense
mm,
for arranged marriages when anyone younger challenges the idea that love can
yeah,
grow.
yeah,
And yeah, that's an interesting concept, I think. I
mm,
don't know if you've been watching Married at First Sight, but I've been watching that and thinking, oh, this is basically an arranged
yeah,
marriage and
yes,
everything that they have to go through
yeah.
to try and get love to kind of click for them. Yeah, it's interesting.
I watched something else. I think it was on Netflix where this woman is, I think she's based in America,
Mhm.
and she's finding mates or husbands and wives for people in the States, but everywhere, either whether in India, whether in England, wherever. And but they're very, very rich. And so you get sort of like maybe the rich, spoiled young man in India who's looking for
Yeah,
somebody in America, but culturally they don't match because even though they may both be wealthy, they're just living in two different worlds. It was really interesting, and she's really good though. Apparently, she does a really great job, and people call her up and they pay whatever they pay. So there's a job out there for everyone. I love that, a marriage planner. But I don't know. Are you able to talk about some of the situations in the book? Because we mentioned it when we talked briefly about
mhm.
some of the things that you address in there that may feel pressurized in the Asian community, and not only in the Asian community. I think it still exists in many communities, but it's probably a bit more so there because it's tied to culture and religion. So are
Yeah,
you
of
able to talk about
course.
that at all?
So the book opens with an abortion scene, which I know is quite, it's a quite a serious beginning. But
Yes.
what we have is a character that doesn't really want to have an abortion. She's not married and she's pregnant, but to her it doesn't feel like the right decision. But she knows that if she keeps the child, that she'll have to face ostracization, she'll have to face judgments from the community, and she knows that her parents might, kind of
Yes.
cut communication with her and she'd lose a lot of her family. So she feels forced into making a decision that isn't right for her. And what that leads to is, she struggles with depression afterwards and she finds it really difficult to carry on and every aspect of her life begins to suffer because she was put in that position of feeling that she has to do something that goes against her personal values and
Yeah.
her will.
Wow. And in terms of him,
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a spoiler, but to be honest, I think it's not predictable, but this is what's gonna happen as the book unfolds. It's not supposed to be this big revelation.
yeah,
But Aryan, the male character, he fell in love with a boy at school and he discovered that he was bisexual and he was put in a position where his parents told him, you're going to have to, cut off your
yes,
relationship with him. And actually, even though laws have changed in India recently, not long ago, and who knows, maybe these things still happen, but you could undergo certain therapies and treatments in
mm,
India to get rid of um, homosexuality and bisexuality. So
yeah.
yeah, and it's about his journey there and how he feels trapped. And he tries to put up a fight initially, but he's broken down and decides that it's just easier to surrender to his parents' will and to just lead the life that they want for him.
Yeah. And I think that happens in a lot of cultures. That's not just
Mm,
Indian culture. Maybe it just seems more taboo there because nobody really talks about it, but it happens a lot. Happens a lot.
definitely, yeah.
So, Yeah, wow. It sounds like a really, really interesting book. Unfortunately I haven't purchased it yet, but I am looking forward to getting it. Because remember I called you, I went into the bookstore and they didn't have it there. I was really annoyed. So I guess I have to do good old Amazon, but I was trying to support a local bookstore as opposed to going to Amazon. But
Mm.
assuming you are on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I guess one of the questions are, what are the unspoken words about love and romantic relationships? What do we need to be speaking about that we don't often speak about? What do you think about that?
I think we just kind of need to be honest about who we love. I think, as you say, every community has their own ideas about who we should love and who we can and
Mm,
can't love. But I think we need to break away from those rules and just allow ourselves to love and stop, attaching judgments to everything. And,
yeah.
that it's okay as well to put love above other things. Like it's okay to put love above um, a disagreement, that you're going to have with your family or with your friends. Like sometimes I think people want to avoid conflicts,
Of
so
course. Yeah.
they'll happily just push love to the side to keep the peace. But actually, I think you've really got to fight for it sometimes. And in the end, there's going to be a positive change, I believe. Like there will be more of a positive change, but you're cutting off the chance by avoiding it altogether and just trying to keep the peace. Because
Mhm.
actually, you're not keeping the peace. There's going to be that part of you inside that's not going to be at peace if you don't allow
Absolutely.
yourself to be authentic.
Absolutely. But don't you think that a lot of people go with that because of the pressure from your community,
Yeah. Mm.
pressure of, the guilt and shame that maybe from a religious perspective or from a cultural perspective, your family, people think, oh my God, I can't believe they allowed this. Um, don't you think that's part of the pressure of why people just jump in and do it?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And, I sympathize with that wholly, and I see it everywhere. But I think, you know, just by being a little bit rebellious, by allowing yourself to have a voice and by claiming your freedom, you're being brave and you're creating that little ripple of change. And I've seen it happen in families time and time again where, one person will do something um, for them that nobody else agrees with, and it's a big thing, it's a problem. But then it happens again and again with other family members, and all of a sudden it's not a huge thing anymore. And I think everyone's so afraid of what other people will say that actually they don't realize that their words are harmless. It doesn't really matter what other people say. The world isn't going to end if somebody judges you.
Yeah, and people will always have their judgments. So you have to be strong with what you believe and what you're feeling and stick to your guns. So I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. So what do you think about online dating?
It's just normal now. I guess like a lot of my friends and just people in my life are finding people online, especially through like Tinder and Bumble. It's an odd thing, isn't it? You kind of
Yeah.
keep swiping left or right on people, and it feels a little bit um I guess at times it can feel a bit shallow because you're
Based on
basing.
the photo.
Yeah, exactly. You're judging somebody on a photo, but it just seems to be the way of the world at the minute.
No.
Meeting online doesn't sound strange anymore. Just it's a easy way to connect.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what percentage of people date online and then actually get married having met online. Because I still think the good old fashioned introduction still goes well. It just doesn't happen as much anymore. But in
Yeah.
my days of dating, you'd go to a bar or you go to a nightclub or you meet somebody in that way. And so I have many friends who are also older than me that want to date, but they can't imagine using an app because they're just sort of like, and then you'll find that a lot of men will put these great pictures of themselves. I mean, we all make ourselves look better on screen, but this picture of them when they were 20 pounds lighter and 20 pounds thinner. and 20 years younger, sorry. And then when you're like, oh, okay, who's that? Because this doesn't look like the person in the picture. So they struggle with that, not wanting to deal with, oh gosh, now I'm out with somebody that looks completely different. And that's the problem with photos, you know?
Yeah, I know, and you just don't get that vibe from them, you know, as you would in passing. You sometimes you just know that you're going to click with someone just by being in their presence, and I think, you know,
Yeah.
that is missing. But this isn't something that I've really had experience with.
No.
I'm married. Well, I married my husband, obviously, husband now. We met when we were 16, and you know, we
Wow.
stayed together all that time. So I've never not really dated.
Wow. Lucky you.
I know, yeah. It looks brutal going
Yeah.
out there trying to date, you know, definitely requires some bravery, I think.
Denise in the audience is saying that some of the pictures are retouched and even fake.
Yeah.
And that's true. I've seen pictures of people saying, "Oh, I work on an oil rig, and I'm away 6 months of the year, and I'm back about," and then it's completely. It happened to me. Found out that it was a completely fake ID, and the person didn't even
Mm,
exist. So that's a little bit scary, but it happens. It
yeah,
happens.
that's
Wow.
terrible.
So are you planning to write another book and possibly about love as well?
Yes, so I'm working on my second novel, and actually this is going to be on female friendship and the strength of that. It's going to be entirely different. So this book is very real, but this next one is going to include elements of magical realism. That's
Oh,
all I'm gonna say at the moment, because I know every time I wind up sharing my ideas, then something happens and I wind up changing the whole story.
yeah,
So
don't say anything. Yeah,
this
that's
has
great.
been my plan for a good while now, so I'm just gonna zip it and not share much
Yeah.
other than that.
I'm trying to remember the Spanish author that does magical realism. Oh, he wrote 100 Years of Solitude. What is his name? I can't believe it's gone. If anybody remembers who it is, please send a message on here. It's driving me crazy. 100 Years of Solitude. It's fantastic, and it's just a really interesting way to look at it. He's talking about the wedding rings now. Yep, yep, yep. We know all about the scandalous stuff that goes online. Thanks for letting us know. But Serena, I think that's really interesting talking about sisterhood and women and the bonding of their relationships. Because I think sometimes our relationships are like sister to sister, mother to sister, friend to sister. You know, we sort of fill in all the gaps that you don't necessarily have in a relationship or in a marriage. But sometimes your friends fill in all those gaps. Is that
Mm.
something that you might be talking about or exploring?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be exploring how these two girls, they start off, you know, the novel starts off in their childhood, but how they support each other and help each other overcome some great difficulties in their lives. And
Mm.
doing that as well through play, through imagination. I suppose I've taken inspiration from, I don't know if you know, The Bridge to Terabithia, which
No.
that one's actually a children's book.
Mm.
But I've taken inspiration from that, and then uh, Ocean at the End of the Lane as well. So you can expect to kind of be immersed in this kind of beautiful childhood where the girls are playing and they're building up a world and they're building up this really strong relationship, and then a tragedy happens,
Ooh.
and it's just about these two girls maintaining that friendship despite that. And I can't really say much more, but that's kind of
No,
where
great.
I'm
That's
going with
really
it.
interesting. And so in terms of writing, are you is this gonna take about a year as well, or do you not know? Will you just see where it goes?
I think because obviously I'm copywriting,
Yeah.
I'm writing all the time, and it's just finding the space to sit down and write, and you know, where I'm not already exhausted from having written all
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah.
I can't. I wish I could say, you know, if this will be done in November. You know, like people do the whole write a novel in a month, November.
I
Don't
can't
know how they do
imagine you
that.
could do that.
But yeah, exactly. I'm taking my time with this one. It's not,
Yes.
all the words unspoken, I devoted all my time to that. I didn't do
Wow.
anything else. So I think at the moment, it's just gonna be written bit by bit.
As you do,
Yeah,
it's better to write when it feels right and give it your all than sort of giving yourself, as far as I'm concerned, a time frame to get it done, because that never worked for me when I wrote. So I think that's going to be great. So I just
yeah. Some authors are amazing though, aren't they? Like, I'm just thinking, um, is it Khaled Hosseini used to wake up at 5 a.m. to write, and Stephen King writes a book in 3 months every time. And yeah, I guess there's a different strategy for everybody, isn't there?
absolutely, absolutely. I do have a question, just going back a little bit, talking about love. You know, personally, what's been the hardest lesson you've learned from love? It's a good question, isn't
That is a very good question, yeah.
it?
I think we all have this, idea of perfection in our heads. We all want the person that we end up with to be perfect in so many ways or to tick off so many boxes. And actually, the reality is that you are going to be with another flawed human being. And
Mm.
and there are going to be times where you're not being self-aware and they're not being self-aware, and that's okay. It's normal to have those moments of friction. It's normal to have those moments of, just kind of
Oh,
resistance as well.
yeah.
And I think some people might give up very quickly, thinking, well, this doesn't feel natural, it doesn't flow, it isn't. But I think love's messy and it's going to be a difficult journey. There are going to be highs and there are going to be lows. And you just have to remember that the other person that you're with is a human being. They're also flawed, they have mistakes, and you do too. And it's just accepting that and coming together and being honest about that. I think
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned.
Yeah, and working through it,
Yeah.
working through it. For me, and you may, I'm sure you'll probably agree, is I think we've watched too many romantic movies and read so
Yeah.
many novels, and so everyone assumes that love, marriage, relationships are always going to be perfect. They always have a happy ending. They always work themselves out. There's this sort of picture of what a perfect marriage should be, and it doesn't exist. The perfect relationship doesn't exist. But for me, it's always a work in progress. It's always
Mm,
a piece of art, and you're always taking that piece of of sculpture and making it what you need it to be, and playing with it and making it stronger and softer, and really working with it. It's a piece
mm,
of art. Love is not something concrete and finite. The feeling might be there, but everything else that comes with it, and it's everything that comes with it. That's the other thing people don't realize,
mm,
especially in a marriage. It comes with the family, comes with the children, if there were children before, or whatever that comes with it. It all comes with it, and you've just got to work through all of it, whether you
exactly.
like it or not.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this is so interesting. So Serena, if somebody wants to buy your book, where can they find it?
So you can find it at, oh, sorry, my cat's meowing. You can find it on Amazon. You can get it from Waterstones, Blackwell's, and you can even get it from my publisher directly. So they're Red Door Press.
The Red Door Press. Okay. And if people are overseas watching, which I have quite a few people that do watch it, they could also get it on Amazon. I assume that's the best place because the
Yeah,
bookstore.
Amazon's definitely the easiest place, I think, to get it.
Get it. Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I think this has been really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to reading your first and second book, because there's so much in there. It sounds like so much to get your teeth into, but we can't talk about it right now. So you have to get the book to find it out. You have to find it out. But I love the whole concept about love, friendship and consequences of the decisions that we make. And it's so important. So, is there anything that you'd like to leave with the audience? Anything else that you think you'd like to share about love that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, I think people say this all the time because it's true, but follow your heart. Like, be authentic, and if you love someone and you want to be with them, don't let fear hold you back.
Yeah,
I think if you make a decision based in love, it's not the wrong decision.
yeah, yeah. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But at least you gave your heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So, Serena, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. Really, really appreciate it. It's been lovely having you on.
Mm.
Lovely learning more about the character and the characters and the story. And I'm really looking forward to reading it. So, thank you so much. And I'll
Well,
see
thank
you in the
you.
green room. I'll see you in the green room.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us on The Joy of Connection. It's been great. I hope you run out and buy Serena's book. It sounds really exciting. And I too will be reading it as soon as I get a copy in my hands, and I'll let you know. Well, I won't let you know too much because you have to buy it, but maybe we can have a book club or something after this. So, guys, thank you for joining me live via Spain. And as I always say, stay joyful, be connected, and shine your light. Good night.